Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. And I'd like to ask Ms. Ralston to lead us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so I have the probably the most difficult part, because it's someone very, very hard to follow, to recognize Mrs. Susan Ralston for her services as the board chair. I've got a few things I'd like to say. It does give me pleasure to recognize and thank Mrs. Susan Ralston for her dedicated services to the Pinellas County Children's and Family. Susan started the board chair in 2019 as Beth came on board, and she led us through some really unprecedented times. A global pandemic and all this aftermath. A hurricane and several tropical storms, mass shootings, racial and social injustices, and more. Yet as a result of her leadership, we remain strong and steadfast in our commitments to always putting children and families first. Without skipping a beat, we held our first ever, and I emphasize ever, virtual planning workshop, resulting in the adoption of a new 5-year strategic plan. We transitioned our public board meetings to a virtual platform and then back to in-person with the strict safety protocols in place, ensuring all CDC and legal requirements were met. We shifted JWB staff to a remote working environment, supported our funded agencies with emergency funds for operations and PPE, and restored hope to families, feeding thousands of children and preventing countless evictions. With a heavy heart, we said goodbye to a long-standing and respected board member, Bernie McCabe. Bid a fond retirement to Bob Dillinger for his years of service, and created a new leadership award in their honor. We then warmly welcomed newest board members, Bruce Bartlett and Sarah Molo. Susan, you left big shoes to fill. I know I speak for all of us when we say thank you for your extraordinary stewardship and for making children a priority. Would you meet me halfway? Well, yeah, but no, this is really yours. It has been, and you were very nice not to ever use it. But now you have, so it's pristine and new for you. But it does state, it says, the Juvenile Welfare Board, first it states your name, and it says the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County 2019 to 2021. Thank you for making children of Pinellas a priority.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This is, thank you. Thank you. It's been an honor to serve Juvenile Welfare Board, and I think it was interesting just to hear about the life of the 2-year chairmanship, and I forgot so many things that went on. But I also think during my tenure as Juvenile Welfare Board chair, or through the board, I think one of the most exciting things we did is to transition to our new CEO, Beth Houghton. And I just think JWB, Juvenile Welfare Board, is in an excellent place right now, and amazing, talented staff, unparalleled leadership in Beth, and thank you, thank you, thank you. And I also want to recognize the 3 prior board members that I served, board chairs that I served under. When I came on the board, it was Maria Edmonds, Jim Sewell, and Brian Ungst. So I want to thank and recognize them as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you. As I said, these are very big shoes to fill. But with that said, let's move on. The Kids First Cooper Bogue Award winners. Linda, please lead us in that.
So for over 25 years, the Juvenile Welfare Board has been recognizing outstanding social service professionals in Pinellas County with our Kids First Cooperman Bogue Award. The award honors those frontline professionals working directly with kids and families to make a difference in their lives. Last year, with so many going above and beyond because of COVID, we redesigned the program and the board approved recognizing 12 individuals instead of the normal 4. Today, I'm honored to present to you winners number 11 and 12. China Cade. China serves as an integrated decision team facilitator with Directions for Living and their Treatment Works program, an intensive home service program for students in grades K through 12 in partnership with the Pinellas County Schools. The program was created as a result of the Parkland shooting tragedy and the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act. In her role, China facilitates team meetings to help students resolve underlying trauma and creates plans to stabilize and prepare them to re-enter their educational environments. China exudes a child-focused approach and is simply amazing at sensing what each child needs. One example is a little boy named Jacob, 7 years old, who was very timid and scared as a result of serious early trauma. China asked if he would like to hold his stuffed animal for comfort and have the stuffed animal speak for him in the family meetings. And it was a huge success. When Jacob ended his treatment, he was a completely different child, vocal, silly, confident, and so much happier. China's supervisor summed up her impact with these words: exuberant, positive, courageous, and life-changing. Join me in congratulating China on this honor. Our next winner is Nu Nguyen, who is a youth worker with the Lealman and Asian Neighborhood Family Center, where he serves kids in both the after-school and summer programs. Nu grew up at the center. He started there as a kindergarten student and now serves other youth who look up to him and respect him. After losing his father earlier this year, Nu became the main source of income for his mother and his sister, working at the center as well as at a second job while also completing his AA degree. Nu was essential during the pandemic. Although he was only part-time at the time, he volunteered extra hours, passing out lunches to children and keeping the food pantry operational. His nominator, Donna McGill, said it was often just her and Nu managing the food pantry to make sure the families had access to nutrition. She described him as hardworking, caring, and eager to help. Nu also assisted the family support specialists by scheduling appointments and faxing required paperwork to help families receive assistance. This was especially important given that many in his community lost jobs as a result of COVID-19 and needed services for the very first time. Without Nu, the center may have been unable to meet those increased demands. He is now a full-time employee with the center, stepping in at a critical time as their after-school program was about to restart. Join me in congratulating Nu. April, you want them to join you in Sabrina in the hallway? So if you're interested in staying, you're welcome to stay. But if you could first get a photo op with our team, and then you're welcome to come back in, or you're welcome to leave.
Congratulations again. Okay, let's continue moving on to the consent items. Assuming all have been reviewed, I'd like to have a motion to approve all consent items.
So move.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, same sign. Consent items have been approved. Let's move on to the action items. To approve the release of early childhood public awareness campaign request for proposal. April, would you like to lead us through that?
Good morning. After a year of planning and preparation aligned with our strategic plan, we are here today to request the release of the Early Childhood Public Awareness Campaign RFP. Year one focused on forming the 0 to 3 think tank and informing the RFP, and now we're ready to procure a creative firm to develop the campaign in year two. Why is 0 to 3 so important? We know 80% of a child's brain growth happens in their first 3 years of life. We're fortunate to have an early brain development expert with us today, Dr. Jamie McHale, with the USF Family Study Center. He's dedicated his entire career to this field. He's passionate, and he's a critical part of our think tank and this campaign. Dr. McHale? And we did not plan our outfits today.
I'm not so sure about that.
So last time you gave me 10 minutes and I got 4 today, and 10 wasn't nearly enough. So I was trying to pick and choose my words really carefully. Many of you were here the first time. It was pre-COVID, so there's not an archive of it that those of you that weren't here last time could go back and watch. And so there were a couple things that I wanted to say. One thing, without being dramatic about it, is you're concerned about school readiness. You're never going to have school-ready kids if they're not socially and emotionally ready. They're never going to be socially and emotionally ready if you ignore the first 3 years of their life, particularly the kids that you're the most concerned about, the highest risk kids in this county. So this is a necessary plank, not this thing we're talking about today, but just the overall initiative is a necessary plank in your portfolio. I'm delighted you're doing it. This is not new to us here in Pinellas County. We've been talking about infant mental health and infant development for about 15 years now. We know a lot. One of the right moves, I think, that y'all made was to assemble this think tank of people who are going to come into a room and not stand on ceremony and be really frustrated if somebody's saying something that's been tried 100 times and has failed, because we know what to do and we haven't had the resources to do it, and now we've got a backbone organization to help to do some of what needs to be done. So thank you for that. And it's possible to take missteps. I don't think you're going to. You got the right people who are advising and giving you information. I had some stuff that I was going to talk about with early brain development. I'm not. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. But what I will tell you is that the piece, it's like you hear this 80% of brain development occurs the first 3 years. Well, of course it does. The body's getting bigger. It's getting bigger. The brain's getting bigger. It's what's happening inside the brain. That's what we talked about the first time I was here. And the way that the brain is structured, some of you know, 3 parts: central core, limbic system, cortex. Central core, ready to go on the first day of life in a full-term infant, not in an early infant, but in a full-term infant. So what develops next over the first 30 months? The limbic system. You and I are sitting here with the limbic systems that were created by our parents when we were infants and toddlers. So, a loud bomb goes off out here, or a loud noise, not a bomb, loud noise goes off here, we jump, we startle. Some of you do. Some of you know what it was. We're different, all of us in this room right now, based on the stress response systems that got set up by our parents when we were small. We still carry them with us. What's different now is that if there's a noise, it's like, oh, that's a car backfiring, it's not a terrorist, I'm fine, because we got the cortex. We can do that. We can down-regulate ourselves. Babies and toddlers don't have that. They rely on the grown-ups around them to help with the stress response. And if that stress is unrelenting, what you're doing is you're building a system that's going to be hypersensitive and hyper-reactive to that for their lives, and certainly when they walk into a preschool classroom, right? So we need to be doing what we can to be providing that remedy, that reparative support early on. Some of it you'll deal with as you're doing this educational campaign, but it's not just an educational campaign, because that's not enough, right? You need to sort of get to families where they are, bite-sized pieces, bring in the right firm who's going to be able to capitalize on what we know already, because we know a lot. The people in this think tank, they're like amazing folks. And there's not a wasted moment in those. You know, you don't go down any blind paths. So I think as long as there's a good dialectic between the folks who are putting this together as a first stage and the folks who have been advising all along, you're going to be good, because you've got the right people in the room. So I'm one of them. I'm just one of them. But what I wanted to say to you, we're not starting from scratch. This is not brand new. We know what to do, and we haven't been able to do it. So now that you've got the might of JWB and this initiative behind it, I think we can maybe start to accomplish some of the things that we've been doing with paper clips and rubber bands for the last 30 years. That's it. That's what I wanted to say. You know, and I can talk to you guys about whatever you want to hear from me while I'm here. And I got to go teach a class in a little while. So I'm not leaving because I'm bored. I'm leaving because I got to go teach in a little while. But I'll stick around for a while. That's it. That's all I want to say. And thank you for doing this. I guess that's the main reason I agreed to come today, was that you guys are really doing this, and it's not just, you know, it's not just window dressing. You're trying to do something that's real, that's genuine, and that's going to be effective. That's for me too. Like, we've done so many things that have been one-off things. We do an event every year that we call Listening to Babies. I'd like you guys to come to that. This is the 10th anniversary of Listening to Babies here in St. Petersburg, Pinellas County. So we've been talking about this for a while. It's just a matter now of connecting the dots and making sure we're getting this to the folks who haven't benefited from it so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Super passionate, and, oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you again to the doctor for your presentation the last time you were here, short as it may have been, was extremely impactful, I believe, for all the board members. And it really did open our eyes to seeing the need and what value we could create. And so again, I want to say thank you for taking that time to opening our own minds and teaching us something that we didn't really spend a whole lot of time thinking about, yet we knew we needed to address.
So as Dr. McHale passionately shared with us, our overarching goal is to promote those healthy interactions between parents, caregivers, and young children birth to 3. We want to emphasize nurturing, love, how to manage stress, compassion. We want to reinforce that parents are their first and best teachers and that their homes are their children's first classrooms. And we need to meet parents and caregivers where they are in the community. We need to give them bite-sized information and easy-to-use ways that they can build their babies' brains. Last year was phase 1. We formed the think tank. We did our initial research. That included listening to the experts like Dr. McHale. We conducted scans of other similar campaigns, and we created the comprehensive RFP that you have in your packets. And now we're ready for phase 2. We're going to be seeking proposals to develop the foundation and tools, the what of the campaign. These are things like the consistent messaging, the branded visuals, our toolkits that have practical items for parents that they can use when they interact with their babies. Perhaps we call these kits brain building bags, similar to what we've done with Sleep Babies Safely and our Welcome Baby bags. The firm will also be developing media and marketing strategies so we can reach those targeted audiences, parents, especially young parents and dads, grandparents, informal caregivers, and our diverse targeted populations. We've budgeted $125,000 for the RFP scope of work to hire a firm, plus monies for the initial media buys and the items like our brain building bags to launch the campaign later this fiscal year. Future years will focus on scaling up the campaign and building a consortium of community influencers for that grassroots outreach. We'll be engaging our neighborhood family centers, community councils, churches, our civic groups, licensed child care centers, and much more. And as Dr. McHale stressed, this is not just a media campaign. This is about starting a movement. It's about making sustainable change. It's also about being memorable and making sure we're speaking the same language. Most of us remember Smokey the Bear. I'm going to borrow this from Commissioner Seal. What was the tagline? Only you can prevent forest fires, right? We want our campaign to be that iconic. Thank you. We heard from several of you with key considerations that we should keep in mind when developing the campaign. Number one, how do we identify and reach those that are currently not served by JWB? How do we touch or reach those we typically have not but might need us most? That's where the experienced and qualified firm comes in. We'll work with them on strategies and channels to reach our target audiences, and we fully expect there will not be one size fits all. We'll have to have multiple approaches. It's also where our grassroots outreach and our influencers come in. They have the pulse of their community. They are the trusted connectors. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with Jacqueline Bolin, who's the executive director of our Hispanic Outreach Center. She said, you know what? I know that Latina mom who watches all the neighborhood babies. She would be perfect for us to reach out to. Well, Jacqueline can help us do that. Number two, this is a long-term commitment. It's going to take time to bring on partners, get everyone saying the same thing, speaking the same language, and demonstrate success. We may need to pivot along the way. We may need to add or subtract elements, and we definitely want to build in feedback loops for consumers. As we expand our reach and capacity, we fully anticipate incremental increases to the campaign budget year to year as we scale up. Creating real behavioral change does take time and investment. And then number three, campaign measurement. How do we know and how do we measure success? As part of the RFP, the firms will be proposing success measurement plans, and some examples of short-term measures may include the number of parents and caregivers that we've reached, how many brain-building bags we've handed out, the number of campaign partners signed on, and of course, any number of analytics for social, website, and marketing reach. But for longer-term success, and while we will never be able to claim causation, we do expect to show correlation. And these might include things like increased participation in our programs that we fund, like our home visiting program, our infant mental health program that Dr. McHale oversees, higher scores on developmental screenings like ages and stages questionnaires. We hope to see increased enrollment in VPK and improved kindergarten readiness scores and on-time grade level reading. So now, with the board's approval, this RFP will go out to bid this week. We'll be back before the board in February with an award recommendation, then in July to present the campaign, and then in August to launch. From there, we'll report back to the board regularly with milestones and successes. So I ask you, how do we know this campaign is going to be successful? When it's going to be successful? For me, we'd be going out into the community, maybe at an event or a restaurant, and instead of seeing parents with their cell phones or their young children on a device, moms and dads will be interacting with their babies and toddlers, reading, singing, talking, playing, counting, pointing. And that's how we will know success. And we may even see a brain-building bag on the table. So, Mr. McCurrack, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Before I ask for a motion on this subject, do I have any comments or questions that any of the board members may have? Let me start with Commissioner and then Dr. Greco.
Just a comment. I believe that this can be transformational, and I think that this is an excellent investment. In fact, I think that we should consider, once we have the plan, investing even more dollars in this. Besides Smokey the Bear, which example I gave, I think about water consumption and how we educated the children in our schools, and they went home and told their parents, which then reduced Pinellas County's water consumption over a period of time. If you invest the resources and you have the right message, you can transform and change. And this is just so critically important. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Dr. McHale, for your presentation. When I read this proposal, I was reading it through the lens of what's going to be different. As Dr. McHale and others of us around this room have said, we've been at this for 20, 30, 40 years with the packages, with the knapsacks. We've handed them out in hospitals. The parent is the first teacher theme. So I hope that the RFP will distinguish or discriminate those that really have different, more significant ideas of how to change, or as the Commissioner is saying, transform, and not just process measures. Because many of those things that you've listed are process measures. How many people did we touch? How many? But I really continually want to focus on, so what are our outcomes? And what are the outcomes that we know we can measure and say we've made a difference? So everyone feels like this is a very important, and I certainly stand shoulder to shoulder and say, yes, this is critical. But it's not the dollar amount, it's the strategy, and if we're going to be effective, we're going to need to hold ourselves to that. When a little confused when you said the launch would be in August, I was looking at the materials, I thought it was going to be in February. Is that when the award is going to be given?
So we're releasing the RFP, and then we'll be evaluating the proposals and coming back because of timing with holidays, et cetera. The soonest we can get back to the board is February. That's when we will award the firm.
Okay.
And from there, do focus groups, create the campaign, come back in July to present the campaign
All right,
at that time. Thank you.
thank you.
Any other comments? Ms. Ralston?
Yes, I actually agree with both Commissioner Seal and Superintendent Grego. I question the amount of money that we spent and that we put into this, and I thought, wow, that's really not enough. But in my discussions with April, I understand, and this is where we move to phase 2, is that this is the campaign. And I think if I heard you correctly, this is the what. And so what we focused on is my concern that we want this campaign to reach children we typically don't serve. And so what we transitioned in our conversation is to phase 3, which is the how. And so we can get the materials, and that would be part of all of this, but it will be critical to put together the most comprehensive phase 3, which is how we will reach those hardest to reach to make the outcome changes that we're talking about. So I had to have my understanding of the difference. And so I will encourage you and your think tank to get together and start working now on the how, to be ready when the campaign is done, the materials are done, and we're ready to hit the ground running, and whatever that means, and whatever money it's going to take to reach those that are the hardest to reach. Thanks.
Any other comments? I do. Yes, Doctor.
I just, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself. And I think there's 2 parts that I just want to say. One part is that the messaging, the content, the knowledge is for every child. It's for every family. It's going to benefit everybody equally. It truly is. I think that the issue is that the way to connect with and have it heard and have it effective is going to be very different. And so one size fits all messaging is always going to fail, right? So that's the how part. That's the part, I think, where that's the grandest challenge. And I think we have some ideas about how, but they've never been able to be implemented. So, and you won't know until you try it, though. It's like, that's a dumb idea, that failed. But I don't think it's going to be a dumb idea. I think you have the right people lined up. I think you have enough cultural sensitivity, competence, awareness, so forth, to be able to do this well. What there hasn't been has been the coordinated efforts. You're doing like one-off kinds of things or not sustained things. That's my hope with this funding that you guys are putting in, that it can be something that's a little bit more relentless than we've been able to do recently. So, but I think that the how is already under discussion.
Right, and so my point is, because we're already dealing with lag time for the procurement and for the evaluation of the vendors, my feeling is, let's stay ahead of this curve and get the next phase done now. Thanks.
Great point. Thank you.
All great responses, and they've kind of all led to what I was thinking in this range of trying to understand. And April and I have had long conversations about this and the importance of this program. I think accelerating the think tank to moving forward to looking at the how is incredibly important. You've got 30 years of experience doing this, and we want to make sure that we leverage off of those 30 years and not go after some things that may not be the right ones to look at. I think the coordination is critical, and the selection is even that much more critical, because we have to find the right organization that truly understands everything that's been done and what needs to be done to move forward and to execute this program correctly. And I think, and it is extremely important, and I look to you, Dr. Greco, the coordination between the work that you've been doing in VPK and in the other areas across education need to be in lockstep with what this is doing. So that one of my long-term expectations, and it is a long-term, is that I see us spending less money at grade level reading and getting children ready to go to school, and more towards preparing them at this stage to be successful in getting to school and becoming part of the community. That's an important piece. If we can't get that done, you've shown it, 30 years of a lot of hard work and effort that's in place that has been done. But if we can't get that coordination between all the organizations, not just the school system, but all the organizations that touch this, it's going to be a hard road. It's too important not to do it. We've taken the stage, and funding will have to be looked at from that perspective. It's not short term. I can't expect, and I don't think any of us expect, that you're going to see outcomes tomorrow. But we definitely want to see in the next 2 to 3 years some directional outcomes that are impactful, that are really not just from our board measurement program, but from really how it impacts the community and how it impacts those children that need it the most. So with that, I ask for I can't think of the word.
I motion
Right?
approval.
A motion for approval. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, same sign. It's approved.
Thank you.
Sorry for the long-winded comments, but now let's move on to the approve award for imprinted and imprints for sleepless sacks, totes, bags, sleeps, baby safety campaign. Karen?
Good morning, Karen Bogus, Chief Program Officer. So I'm here this morning, and all of you at your seats should have a Sleep Baby Safely bag. And inside, which is received by every parent who gives birth in Pinellas County. The Sleep Baby Safely campaign and the Welcome Bag Initiative started and launched in January of 2018 to promote safe sleep and prevent unintentional suffocation and other sleep-related deaths. And this is part of our Preventable Child Deaths Collective Impact Initiative. So all parents giving birth in Pinellas County hospitals receive face-to-face sleep education. They receive this bag with the campaign messaging. So they have a onesie that says "this side up," a sleep sack, a lone back crib. They get a book and other educational materials. What we've seen in the 4 hospitals, so I want to say a big thank you to our staff, Joanna Maniscalco, and our volunteer groups who help pack these bags on a regular basis. Every month, the bags are delivered to our 4 birthing hospitals: Bayfront Baby Place, Morton Plant Hospital, Mease Countryside, and St. Petersburg General Hospital. And so since 2008, in our first year, we saw a 50% reduction in unsafe sleep-related deaths. In 2019, we saw a slight uptick. And then, of course, 2020, during COVID, and you'll hear me say that a little bit today, we saw an uptick. Again, during that time, though, there was not many face-to-face services that were happening in the hospital to really present and share with parents this information. So we are here this morning to for approval for the request for Turtle Moon. There was a process that took place. Turtle Moon is the one staff is recommending for $72,090. This is for all of the pieces and components in the bag for an entire fiscal year. The reason why we're coming and we hadn't come last year is last year it was under $50,000 with the limited amount of opportunities due to all the protocols that were in place and getting these items out to hospitals. So this year, we expect to fully be able to make all of this happen. And so the request goes above the $50,000. And so we are here this morning for your approval. And I open it up for questions.
Any questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve? Oops, I'm sorry. Jim, did you
I was
have one?
actually just going to make a comment. This is a great program. I don't know that each of the board members have had a chance to see this in action, but we see it through EMS as well. What a fantastic program. Yeah, there's been some uptick in it, but I think we can relate that back to COVID. People are a little more closer at home, feeling insecure about things and how things are taking place in homes during COVID. But the program is awesome. Certainly want to see this program continue to grow as it is currently now, and improve. I don't know how much more we can improve it, but getting that word out to these parents, not only at the hospital level, but also at the home level, is really critical. These are countless deaths that are completely avoidable, 100% avoidable. And it's just a matter of getting the knowledge out there and teaching the parents, that this is unsafe practice. Some of that goes back from history. I will say, like, I've had parents say, well, my mom slept with me when I was a kid, and, she slept with her mom when she was a kid, and so they think it's okay because the family generations have done this. They just don't realize the safety that's involved there, and how easily an overtired parent might roll over on top of a child and not realize it, or put them in the crib incorrectly, and then the baby suffocates in the crib as well. So great program. Thank you so much for what you guys have done to the staff and Beth and everybody. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The motion approves.
I'm up again.
Okay. All right, well, Karen, get ready. Let's talk about the respite program request for proposal.
Yes. So if you all remember, last month I was here doing a more in-depth presentation on the outcomes for our PCAN result area, prevention of child abuse and neglect. And I spoke about that I would be coming back this month to talk more in depth about our respite services RFP scope of work that we've been working on and developing. It is part of the strategic plan 4.3. Staff have been researching, and we surveyed the community in regards to respite services that are needed. And we currently fund a respite program through PARC, and it is about slightly over $400,000. And they strictly do only in-home respite services. What we're really looking for here is a much more comprehensive array of respite services. When we surveyed the community providers, this is some of the feedback and information, as well as when we researched nationally what's going on. So what we are proposing is to do both in-home respite services, out-of-home respite services, whether that be center-based childcare for young children 0 through 5, whether that be group type of respite situations for older children. We're looking for potential weekend and overnight respite, as well as one of the other areas that when we were doing the research, there was a lot of information, was sometimes families are really reluctant to have a stranger, especially in these times, coming into their home or dropping their child off somewhere. So really training family members or known caregivers appropriately to be able to do respite services. But in addition to that, what we want is a really comprehensive assessment, family engagement, really providing a robust family support piece and component to this program. Because the outcomes are, yes, keeping families out of the child welfare system, but also we want to decrease family stress, and we want to increase that support. And we know that our area is very transitional, and so families don't have maybe all of their robust family network or a friend network in our area. So really helping families develop those informal support systems, coping skills, resiliency. In some cases, the situation the child may be diagnosed with isn't ever going to go away. And so, but that doesn't mean that the family's going to need respite services for the remainder of time, but what it does, we can help bolster all of that up. So what we are proposing in all of these services are rather what we would call high risk, for providers. We are looking to invest, or talking to you today about investing a $2.6 million in this array of services. We wanted to get your feedback and input on the scope of work and on the funding amount as well. And I'm opening up for questions. I would say one other thing is we've been talking a lot about hard to engage families. And this is a way that respite services offers an immediate relief. You go to counseling, you have families that go to counseling. Sometimes that takes many, many sessions. You're going up and down with the stressors that are happening. In this case, respite services offer something, almost immediately to families to give them that break, to decrease that stress. And so I just wanted to add that, opening up for questions.
I was just going to add, from a process perspective, this is not an item for action, but it is significant, and we wanted to hear comments. You will see this, assuming we go forward, you'll see this twice more, and those will be votes. A vote to approve the request for proposal going out, and then once selections are made, those contracts will come back here for your approval. So this is not the last time you'll see it.
Comments?
And
Yes.
just to clarify, this is to supplement the current contract with Park.
Park has already said they really don't want to continue this program over the long term. Now, whether or not they propose to do a component, I'm not sure. But for some number of years, it's been sort of clear this doesn't fit real cleanly within their strategies and their strengths. And so we knew, and they knew, and they already had this discussion, that once we put some of these other things in place, that they will transition out of the service.
Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner.
I've talked with Beth about this before, but years and years ago, there used to be timeout homes. And that model was so successful, but because of licensing board standards, they could no longer make it work. So then they tried to transition to a program with the YMCA, which didn't work either. But truly, the timeout homes was for somebody who was, a colicky baby, or somebody who was in crisis and who just needed the time for a child to be taken care of. So I don't know whether we encourage somebody to relook at starting a program like this, whether this is an opportunity. But, to me, this should be someone who, a parent who's at a breaking point, who just needs sleep or just needs that time, that they don't end up shaking a baby or they don't end up taking an action that they never normally would have done. They've just reached that breaking point. So I hope that we encourage somebody to think in a creative way in setting up this program. Thank you.
Dr. Greco?
Yeah, my question hinged on the prior two comments. I was curious of what other agencies actually do this work, and will JWB be the sole agencies. I mean, we deal with this a lot where parents just need a break, and mainly a lot of times where children are going through some really severe illnesses. So are there, I mean, what other agencies are there, or what other companies, conditions, or
I know.
I mean, I think this is great, don't get me wrong, but are we going to be it
In funding this,
in providing the service, in funding it?
yeah, what I would say is, in calling around and trying to understand, if anyone else is providing respite services, I think we see maybe some of it in the developmental disabilities area, or access to specific kinds of respite services in that area a little bit more. But what we understand is, and even in surveying our providers, no one necessarily wants to do it all. I think providers are saying, we would like to do a piece and a part that really fits the mission and our organization. But I know in our research, we haven't found anyone. We found different parts of like South Florida, there is a home that services children, so families can drop off their children, whether it be for one night, for 2 nights, in that kind of way. So we found pockets around, but not necessarily full service here.
The question a different way is, how do communities, whether in South Florida, wherever across the United, I mean, this service is really needed. How do they provide it if there's not a JWB board funding? How does it go about it? So you don't have to answer that, but I think it's a good question to examine. So that's it.
Well, I will say, back before I worked here at JWB, I worked up in New York at an organization, Hispanic Counseling Center, for 5 years, running a respite program. We received our funding, though, through mental health dollars up there, and it was specific for children who had a psychiatric diagnosis. And we provided both group and in-home respite opportunities.
Dr. Morrison Rodriguez?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that in doing some background research on evaluating respite programs, there are states, for example, that will pay for respite as part of their child welfare system to try to cut down on children going into care. So I found many state databases. Some of them provided crisis nurseries for very small babies. Some of them actually had programs that hired relatives to come in, sort of a kinship care model, but for respite, or neighbors, and they let the parents make a joint decision with the caseworker about how to do that. So there are actually a lot of respite programs. Many of them are concentrated for children with severe medical conditions or developmental disabilities, is where I saw most of the programs in that area. And there are some circumstances under which insurance will pay for respite for children, for example, who are severely disabled because of medical conditions. So it's a mixed bag, but there are a lot of examples for us to look at.
Okay, but staying, I think, some of what Dr. Greco was asking was, if we know that Park wants to get out of the program, it doesn't feel it's part of its core capabilities, do we have a plan? Do we have a strategy as to how we would utilize the funding that we're going to put towards this, and what providers might be able to support the effort?
I see.
Do we have that? Do we have something
So-
that we can reach out to, or organizations that are ready to go in place that will pick up the slack?
So the plan would be is that we would be coming back, gathering the information from today, coming back with the full RFP for approval in December, and then, much like April was talking, we have to go through the evaluation process, and then coming back with the award to award in April. And then what we would be doing is working on that transition from May, June, and, from the closing of the current fiscal year, moving into the new fiscal year, transitioning some of those families potentially to the new providers and the new system. But again, working all through that. That was our plan the entire time, is that we would try to, as best as possible, have a smooth transition, ending one provider and bringing on another one.
I guess my concern is that it sounds to me that there isn't one provider that's out there capable of doing this alone. Therefore, you either have to build a network or wind up JWB becoming the provider, which I'm concerned about. But I know you don't have an answer for it. I'm not asking you for an answer this minute. I know you're going to have to deal with it in the RFP. But I ask that you ensure that there's a contingency built somehow that says what happens if I can't find that one or two providers that could provide this service in a correlated way, so that we're not just, again, splintering out and it winds up being JWB is the only backbone of it or support of it.
Right now, we use Family Services Safe Place to Be as respite for the teens, because the families can go drop the kids off, so to speak. DCF is not involved, counseling that's there. Inside the dependency system, we're doing as you suggested. We are using other foster families to be that respite for the ones with the critical needs kids, and they just need a break. And so even once we've reunited, parents with their kids, we're asking if you need the respite care, if it's getting tough, if you say something, it's not another knock on your door. And so we're doing exactly what you're saying, trying to train family members what the medical needs are so that they could be that respite care. So you can probably do it in the community. But again, there were those homes, and they were well utilized, and I don't know if maybe you could get foster families or foster homes that would agree to be the respite caregivers, because we have night to night. They're not taking kids permanently, but they're willing to take kids just based upon numbers and what's going on for a few days, and you can probably utilize them as respite homes as well.
I know, I think one of the pieces, and we say it in the memo, is that because of the responses from our current provider community in regards to this, we do see this as a collaboration, a potential collaboration among a number of providers to provide this array of services. So that, I know that, when we did the literacy bidders conference, we allowed time after that conference for anybody who attended to network and talk, and I would expect that we would do the same for this after the bidders conference, allow time for interested parties to have conversations.
And I would assume that you're, as having discussions or working closely with the Children's Licensing Board as well to try to integrate those that are licensed, those providers that are licensed under the board, that could potentially provide that type of service that Judge Moore just described. If it's going to be out of network, I think you have somewhat of a built-in network there that might be able to be utilized. So it's just worth having that conversation if you haven't already had it.
Yeah, I know that our club, and I don't know if it's still currently in place, but I know that they had worked with DCF and the licensing board to to have a place for children, in particular 0 to 5, say sibling groups, that would be able to be in the same room for the day in a child care center, and they work that out with licensing. So I believe that, in discussions with licensing and understanding the goal of what we want to do here, working together to figure out how we can make this happen.
Then I look forward to hearing back from you in the near future. Let's see what we have. Okay, so we've completed that. I'm glad you're still standing there. Can you take us through a dashboard update?
Yes.
I think we're going to move her chair.
Good morning again. I'm here today to present the dashboard. This is a dashboard that was presented last year around this time as well. Really, these are looking at high metrics, 1 or 2 in each of our result areas. What I do want to say is that you do not see early childhood development, our newest results area, up there. In a lot of the discussions that occurred this morning, it's going to take time. Dr. Barbara Marcin Rodriguez, our Chief Evaluation and Innovation Officer, is leading the charge with the 0 to 3 think tank, working hard, and they will be establishing high metrics. But we do know that that takes time, and then the collection of data and implementation takes time. So as soon as that is all available, we will add that to the chart. The other result area that you do not see up here is our internal organizational capacity result area. And Linda Leedy, immediately following this presentation, will be doing an update on the strategic plan and including that in her presentation. So the next piece of this is this dashboard reflects the time period from 2017 to 2020 and 21. It depends on when the metrics are available. So you will see in some cases we can go up to 2020, in other cases we can go up to 2021. Both 2020 and 2021, of course, are impacted by COVID. You know, our families have been impacted through many stressors that are happening. I mean, we all have. Our children haven't seen something of a normalcy in almost 2 years. And our programs that we are funding certainly have experienced tremendous challenges: closings, quarantines, staffing shortages. So all of this impacts service delivery as well as our outcomes. So I just say that as we look through this, understanding that. The last thing is that each of you should have at your seat the Child Opportunity Index map. This map shows or illustrates where children are, the areas children are living in that are indicated as very low, low, moderate, high, very high areas. I use this, I had this at your seats to use as a reference when I speak to some of the population and demographic data as we move through this. The COI area considers 24 different indicators and groups them under and is really looking at health, education, socioeconomic status, and environment. So moving to the first one, school readiness. So under this result area, we are really looking at a child's score on the STARS Early Literacy Assessment. They take this is administered by our district. They take this typically within the first 30 days of entering into kindergarten. What we know about the school year of when this data is from referencing fiscal year 20, children were entering into the school system of August of 2020, when parents, the school start time was delayed for 2 weeks, and parents were deciding whether they were going through brick and mortar or virtual. What we also know is that in the case of parents who chose virtual, some of them had the opportunity to bring their child into school to do the assessment, whereas kids who were in brick and mortar were able to do the assessment at school as well. So what we see here is that from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20, we see a 2% decline. What I also want to share is that participants in our school readiness portfolio are coming from our early learning centers, our early learning supports, so some of those are behavioral support systems that are providers that are in place. Also our HIPPY program, our school readiness match dollars. What's interesting is 80% of children that are in this portfolio are coming from very low, low to moderate COI areas, predominantly coming from very low and low areas. What we see, and of course we'll be coming back as we do throughout the year with different presentations on result areas, So we will be, when we get the data, we typically get school readiness data around February. So usually around March or April, we can be presenting the information for the children that entered this school year. What we do see in this area, what I will say the positive, is that we are making an impact, in particular on children that are in COI very low, as well as low areas and moderate. Those children who are minorities, we are seeing if they stay in our programs 1 to 3 years, so dosage matters, they are ready for school. So it's something for us to continue to keep an eye on and understand as we move forward with this. The next, school success. So here is our school success portfolio. This consists of our out-of-school time programs, our intervention programs, such as truancy and some behavior, as well as violence prevention. Also, our school-based health programs. So this is a large chunk of our programs. What we look here is that children, students, that they have a score of 3 or higher on the Florida assessment, both for English language arts as well as for math, that a 3 or higher is considered proficient. In fiscal year 20, in the spring, the FSA was not administered. In this past spring, the FSA was administered, and the results are as follows. 33% were scoring 3 or higher in ELA, and 39% were scoring 3 or higher in math. Again, what we see in this area is 76% of our program participants are coming from very low, moderate COI areas. And what we see here, again, is the similar struggle. We will be coming to the board next month with a literacy program update on how our children are performing in the MAP assessment, which we worked with the school district on this past summer, getting that data, and we will now be getting that data on a regular basis for all of our program participants. Dr. Grego?
I was kind of having a little chest pain. The school success is solely those individuals that you're servicing through your, okay, because the way it reads, it's the entire school district, and
I'm sorry,
thank
no,
you for
it's
the
just
clarification.
JWB participants.
Yeah, okay, I was just, so, because we're way over, so, which is good. I mean, it's all, it's rising tide lifts everything. So, okay, if we could just clarify that. because
Dr.
It
Greco,
looks like it's the entire school district.
Yeah, Dr. Greco, it's not good.
No, it's
No,
not.
no,
I'm not.
no, and
I'm
that's
not
also,
suggesting
it just
but
kind of leads back to
just-
what I was
we
trying to
need
say earlier.
clarify it.
You know, what I was trying to say earlier is that there's so much going on in areas that with the coordination amongst all the groups, we need to leverage off of those things that are going good.
Right.
And come together and create the opportunities for those to get better. And, you know, I think that in its own, as I was looking at it, that in itself, to me, says what we're doing in 0 to 3 is so important. I mean, that measurement alone, regardless of that it's only this one portion or not, I think still overall, it's something that we really need to do.
It really is, Mike, and you made a great point. But the other point that I think needs to be made, even to this group here, is that the state, during that FSA not administered, went down considerably. In some areas, 10, 11 percentage points. In our district, we did not. And so we held steady where everyone else dropped. And so, yeah, I don't raise a flag of victory, but it is a type of victory. The call I was on earlier, if I looked at our, specifically, if I looked at our math scores, the state went down 10%, we went down 5%. When I break out the underrepresented or African-American and Hispanic students, we didn't lose ground. Now, we didn't accelerate. And so from your perspective here, 39-42, just understand the conditions. Again, I'm not celebrating it, but I am saying to us all, we need to understand that given the same conditions across the state, they decreased quite a bit, and we held our own. Even in algebra, which is a kind of a gatekeeper, especially for minority students of advancement, the state went down 13 percentage points in the algebra EOC, and we went up 2 percentage points. So, you know, our goal was to go up 5 percentage points. We went up 2 in a pandemic that the state went down 13. I'm okay. You know, I'm not going to, I still am shooting for the 5. And I think we need to understand that where there's a gap in the middle of that. And so how did it progress? The state of Florida might have went down 5 or 10 percentage on a state assessment, but the rest of the country went down considerably more because many of their children were not even exposed to any instruction or kind of pretend instruction in that way. So I think we need to take this with a grain of salt. No, nobody's happy that we're not at 45 or higher or 90 and things like that, but let's learn from the strategies that have worked and be relentless in terms of, we have the resources now. I mean, we have federal funds now. We can do anything we want to do. So thank you for maybe qualifying that.
Yes, yes.
I was looking at my notes here. I was going,
No.
so, holy man, I got to get back to work. Yeah. This is not good, but it is for our population, and we deal with some very struggling populations here, so we ought to be mindful.
Yes, and I think the point about this being during the pandemic, and as we know, dosage matters.
It does.
And kids were coming in and out of schools, our programs, and you know, when we talk about this staffing crisis, and I think we're going to continue to hear this, I mean, that also, I know the school district is facing it, our programs are facing it, and it's impacting how our kids can get served on a regular and consistent basis. That relationship between our out-of-school time staff and our program staff and our participants is critical.
Well, you'll have all of the MAP assessments that you need for this, and you should already have it now
Yeah.
because we've already administered it.
Yes, we're working very closely with Lori Matway, Mike Feeney, and we are going to be meeting with them probably in a week or so to go over for our literacy participants in prep for our next, when we come to the board meeting next month. Okay, we can move. And I wanted to say in both, I would say, school readiness and school success, Dr. McHale had talked about that social emotional learning piece, and we are working on that in both of those areas that also impact how a child can progress academically and socially. Okay, our next area is strengthening community. Here we're looking at how many meals we were able to provide to children in our community. The Hunger Initiative that is in place started back in 2015, and it has over 50 partners. And because of this initiative being in place, they were well poised to respond to the need when the pandemic hit. And as you can see in fiscal year 20 and then in 21, the efforts to get meals out to children was very successful. We increased it in 20 through break spots, Pack-A-Snack, GA Foods, working with a variety of food pantries, food banks, and providers across the community. In 2021, we invested even more dollars with the St. Pete Free Clinic to, again, work across our community with different organizations and providers from the north part of the county down to the south. So we know that they are working with Shepherd Center up in Tarpon, they're working with Dunedin Cares, they're working with RCS, as well as a number of other organizations as we trickle down, really trying to get meals to children in need. And then the next area is prevention of child abuse and neglect. And I won't go into this in great detail because I was here last month where we went into it in great detail. Again, we're going to be watching these numbers as we move through this pandemic and really understanding and really trying to do that outreach to hard-to-reach families and get them engaged in services. And with that, I will turn it over to Laura Krugerbrock, who will take over for the financial portion.
So the last slide shows the performance measures relative to the percentage of administrative expenses over total expenditures and fund balance, the blue bar as well as the orange bar, which is the percentage of fund balance to total expenditures. And we can see on the orange bar that that number has increased, and we've talked about that at length relative to fiscal 20. I did want to point out that the numbers on the graph relative to fiscals 17 through 20 are the audited numbers. Fiscal 21, of course, we are still in the process of closing the books out, so we've kind of tried to estimate some of the reimbursement requests that come in October from all the providers, so we certainly don't have all of those numbers. But we do see that the preliminary numbers are showing an increase relative to the orange bar graph. On the blue graph, relative to the administrative expenses, we saw that in fiscal 20, we decreased to 7%, and actually, in actual numbers, it was 6.94. And that makes sense because the administrative expenses, as the pool was larger, meaning the expenditures and the fund balance was a little bigger. In fiscal 21, this bar graph is showing that that percentage would be 6.92. So it's still 7%, but it's close. And again, those are estimates. I did go back and look at what the percentage was for the fiscal 22 budget with all the new positions that we've added, and that number is 7.16. So we're seeing a little bit of an increase, but those are the percentages that we have shown in the last several years. And then once we get the books closed out and audited for fiscal 21, then those numbers would be adjusted accordingly.
Karen?
And that's the conclusion. And
Oh, so now you can go, you can sit down unless we have some other questions for you. Yes, Ms. Ross?
I have some comments. And first of all, thank you for bringing a dashboard back. I know we've tried this in the last couple of years and had mixed results or mixed reactions. Again, fabulous work, and I hope that it's a work in progress. So I want to make some comments on 3. And again, if what I have to say was said when I left the room, please let me know and I'll apologize. For school readiness, school success, and PCAN, I think we've talked about this over and over and over and over and over again. Our work is good when we have those children in front of us to serve. And so I would at some point in the future like to start looking at how do we go find the kids that we're not serving that can really make some additional impact into the community. So again, I think we've talked about that horse before, so I'll leave that there. My comment on strengthening communities. I think it's fabulous that we've served all these meals to our children. I see that as a task, okay, we've served all these meals. One of the things I would like to see in the future is that we coordinate and consolidate and align the work of our 9 family service centers and see what we can do to look and see where there is alignment for the hardest and most needy of the neighborhoods that we serve, and how do we measure, because always the family service centers have been under this goal. And so serving meals to kids, fabulous. We want our kids fed and have a roof over their head. So that's my point on that one. And thank you. You know that I'm always going to put my light on when it comes to a dashboard. Thank you.
We hope you do. Any other comments or questions? All right, Karen, you now can take a seat again. The strategic plan update. Linda Leedy?
Morning, everyone. So I'm going to be brief, but I am here today to give you the quantitative overview of our strategic plan progress. As Karen alluded to, you've heard robust presentations throughout the year on the qualitative work that has happened over the year. In March, you heard about school readiness and school success. In May, it was early childhood development. In June, it was strengthening community. July, I talked about organizational capacity. And then in September, Karen did prevention of child abuse and neglect. And then you just heard Karen and Laura give an overview of our high-level fiscal year performance programmatic and financial metrics. I'm going to talk about progress on our strategic plan. Just a little reminder for how we got here. Last July, as Mr. McCurrick mentioned, we had our virtual facilitated strategic planning session where the board talked about future planning and priorities. And then in September, the board did approve a strategic plan with 6 results areas and strategic objectives for each. And then in the last part of 2020 and the beginning of 21, staff had to figure out, well, how are we going to achieve these objectives? What are we going to do? So we developed tasks, and that's what it's called in Microsoft Project. That's the program we're using or the software we're using, but they're much more than tasks. They're things like procure respite services for the community, which isn't like a 2-week process as you're hearing. It's like more of a 1-year process. So we developed 111 tasks for our strategic plan over the course of 5 years, 92 of which we said we would start in year 1. We assigned staff and leads to each task. We assigned start date by quarter, end date by quarter, somewhere throughout the 5-year trajectory. And then based on the projected quarter start date, we calculated the percentage of the plan that we thought we should have done in year 1. And then to monitor our progress, we asked staff in quarters 2, 3, and 4 to estimate their completion of their tasks. So we had a calculation we can make at the end of the year. So how did we do? Ta-da. So we expected to be 18% complete of our full 5-year strategic plan in year 1, remembering that we really didn't develop all the tasks until second quarter and put the parameters around them. But we, sort of much to our surprise, we were able to accomplish 20% of our plan this year, of our full plan, based on the tasks that we created to start, some start and finish in year 1, most of them continue forward. We're just getting, obviously it's the first year, we're just getting started. So overall, we're on target, a little ahead of schedule. Then how did we do by each result area? So you can see for all of our programmatic, early childhood, school readiness, school success, PCAN, and strengthening, again, we performed above our anticipated target. The only area where we fell short is organizational capacity. You can see we thought we would be about 24% complete, and we ended up at 19. And the reason for that are twofold. Reasons are twofold. One, in HR, we're a little behind our expectations because, as you've heard me speak before, we've had increased demand and need in the HR area as we bring on new staff, as we deal with COVID, as we work remotely. And the board did approve a new position for HR that has been filled, and we have somebody now supporting the team, so we hope to catch up in HR pretty soon. The other area where we fell short was in our data systems implementation. We were quite aggressive in starting 3 new data system implementations this year, and 2 of the 3 are on schedule. The third, our general ledger accounting software, is not going according to plan, and staff have been working with the vendor to see what we can do to make that whole. But hopefully, as we move forward this year, we will catch up. And because that's behind, the integration of all the data systems hasn't happened yet. They all need to talk to each other and be able to aggregate the data. So we're not as far along on that piece either. But again, we do anticipate that throughout the course of this year, we will be able to bring that particular result area to target. So overall, we're we really honestly didn't know how this was going to come out until we crunched the numbers. We were like, I hope we achieved what we thought we were going to do. And in fact, we felt like we were fairly successful. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions, anyone? I think that's an excellent start. Thank you so much, Linda. And I know now that the tasks are all in play, here's where the fun starts. So thank you again. All right, on to the Chief Executive Officer's report. Beth?
Thank you. Wanted to mention several things to you. The first is, and you may well have read, that Florida reversed its position on the summer pandemic EBT program. Our governor and the Florida Department of Children and Families recently announced that Florida would be applying for the summer, it's called PEBT, or Pandemic Electronic Benefit Transfer, a program that is expected to net about $820 million in federal funding to help feed 2.1 million low-income Florida children. As background, back in August, several advocacy organizations cautioned that the Sunshine State had not yet applied for summer PEBT, which was available to it, and was one of only a handful of states that had not yet taken action. So there is an organization called the Safety Net Advocacy Coalition, or SNAC, which activated more than 80 other organizations to sign a letter to the governor and DCF secretary urging that the state reconsider. And we were asked to sign on to that letter. It was well within the parameters of JWB's 2021 consensus platform for advocacy, and so we were one of many who signed on to that letter. Only a month later, Florida announced that it did plan to run a summer PEBT program retroactive for this year, and that the United States Department of Agriculture had approved over $1 billion in federal dollars to fund the program. So it's just a significant win in a very efficient program to get money to families for food. The FSI program has, we've all used this pivot term, way too many times, but it has gone where the action is, I'll put it that way, in a variety of ways over this last year. At the last board meeting, I believe it was Brian Ongst who suggested, what are we doing, or are we doing anything for those families who, because either a classroom or a daycare center room or the whole center is closing down, and therefore the parent can't work because they don't have anybody to take care of their kids, many of those folks don't have any backup. They don't have any, they can't use sick time for that purpose and so on, and they may lose 5 to 10 days of work, which is devastating to their income. And would the Family Service Initiative, well, I think Brian's question was just, are we doing anything about it? And so as we took that back, we thought, we could make FSI support available to those families. That's not a criteria we used before because we hadn't had it before. And so we have now implemented that. I don't think we've seen, somebody can help me, but I don't think we've seen a lot of families in that category yet, although is this, am I remembering this? Yeah. Is this one of the, yeah, okay. Although we've been putting out the word. It takes time to get out the word, but you have that at your seat, both in English on one side and Spanish on the other. So if you're struggling to read it, you might want to turn it over. I don't know, Linda, you want to pipe in on that one?
Sure. So we did create a code within our service point system to track these families, and we've had a couple come in, but more importantly, we've had a lot more calls to 211 for assistance with diapers and food for children, under 5, because our staff, Janine Evoli, went and met with 150 early learning center providers and letting them know about the program and what was available, and we have seen an uptick in those requests. Interestingly, after we got this in place, sort of the Surgeon General of the state and the governor said, well, you know, we really don't want to quarantine or close classrooms, so do what you can to keep them open. So we haven't seen as many closures and maybe not as much need immediately. But we are pleased with the uptick in the calls for the necessary things like diapers and food.
And I think that makes a lot of sense in that there are still federal programs for rental assistance, but the rental and some utilities, but not for some of these other things that families need. And so once again, we can, that's always been part of what we provided support for, and we can fill that gap, which is terrific. So did a lot of, to many earlier points made here, how do you let people know? So we partnered with the License Board and Early Learning Coalition and getting out to centers and so on, where the families are. Then on a related note, I just mentioned that rental assistance, that FSI and our navigators continue to provide assistance to Pinellas County residents who may qualify for the government's emergency rental assistance program. And to date, the navigators have reached out to about 212 families with this, I'm talking about the third iteration of rental assistance, whose submissions were missing information, and there just weren't people in place to do that, to initiate those calls and affirmatively assist those families. So that's still all in process, but of those, 83 have completed their applications and presumably will be approved for the assistance they need. So we've all been reading a lot about the huge dollars of assistance that are getting stuck one place or another. And, it's easy just to be critical, but I'd also say it's a lot to stand up, whether that's at the state level or certainly at the county level. Many of these are at the county level, and we see our contacts and our partners with the county working very hard, moving heaven and earth to get these things done, but it's very hard to stand up these programs and anticipate everything. So navigators are really helpful in that regard. We've talked a little bit already about infant safe sleep. There's a month for everything, and October is the month for infant safe sleep awareness. And you have a baby bag at your seats. We've already talked about it some. I'd want to also mention, and Chief Milliken knows well, that this is not merely a JWB project. We have lots of partners out in the community, and key among those are the fire and rescue folks who end up in homes for a variety of other reasons, perhaps, and just can lay eyes on and say, there's a baby here, but there's not a bassinet or a crib or a pack and play. And many of our fire rescue folks and fire stations have had, whether fundraisers or donations or all of the above, to get pack and plays donated, and they keep them there at the fire station. So if they see somebody without an appropriate bed for a kid, they make it happen really quickly. I don't know, Chief, would you want to say anything else about that?
Yeah, actually, very much on target. So I believe majority of the fire departments in Pinellas County, there's 18 of us, are carrying the pack and plays. We've done things to make donations available to purchase those. JWB's done a great job of getting the materials to all the fire departments, and so we all have that. It's a program that was very well accepted in the fire service because we also are the paramedics. We're the first on scene for EMS, and we see a lot of this happening. And you see it, you take care of it, but then you think when you get back to the station, like, oh, how can we help this? How can we prevent this in the future? And this program has done a great job of opening the eyes up for the fire rescue personnel to see ways to help prevent this going forward. So when we go in home, we may be there for something different. We might be there for the parent or the brother or sister, but we see that baby in the house and we see they don't have a crib or they don't have a bassinet or a pack and play or something there, or we see him cuddled on the couch with mom and dad, and gives us an opportunity just to drop some information to them, give them a bag, and explain the safety precautions of what happens when they don't sleep their child correctly. So it's been a great program, and we thank JWB very much for bringing this forward to the fire departments.
Well, the fire departments have absolutely been the arms and legs and educators in homes. It's been a great partnership. And on that note, later this afternoon, the St. Pete City Council is going to issue a proclamation for Infant Safe Sleep Month. And I'll be co-presenting briefly alongside St. Pete Fire Rescue Chief Ian Womack. So that's always, it's always nice to be able to get that word out in another way. The Dillinger McCabe Leadership Award, the deadline was October 1st. We received a total of 30 nominations that met the minimum criteria and are now under review by the selection committee. The selection committee is going to meet October 18th to review, rank, and select the top nominee. And I'm completely out of that loop, as it should be, so I have no idea who those 30 are or where it'll go. But we're very excited about it. And we, all things willing, we plan to unveil that leadership award at JWB's 75th anniversary awards luncheon. Technically, our 75th anniversary is this November, but nobody felt very comfortable about having a public event then. So April 29th, that is Friday, is when we're hoping to do this, and a save-the-date invitation will be sent to you. It will be at the Coliseum, so there's a lot of physical space, so we can all space out.
I can just say one thing. As part of the review committee, the 30 applications that we received are excellent. I'm pleased to see that they were as strong as they are. So it's not an easy selection, but it's a good selection because of the fact that every one of them, I believe, are capable of winning this award. So it's going to be interesting on the 18th to go through all of them and then negotiate, I think, to some extent, who's going to win. But well done, and thanks everyone for helping get the right candidates in front of us.
Great. Well, I mentioned, I'm sorry, Susan? As I mentioned, November 5th is our actual 75th anniversary. On November 5th, 1946, voters in this county overwhelmingly passed a referendum to create the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County. And so for the last 75 years, in a whole variety of ways, JWB has been making children a priority. And so that Friday afternoon, November 5th, JWB is going to host a staff appreciation event at Eagle Lake Park in Largo to celebrate JWB staff and just the fun of being together in what we hope to be a very safe environment, and 75 years of putting children first. All of you will be invited to attend, and an email invitation will be sent out. It is my pleasure to announce that Becca Gross-Teeter will be joining JWB as our Public Policy Director, effective October 25th. We had some superb candidates, and I appreciated kind of words of recommendation that came from some of our board members, some for Becca and some for other candidates. But now I'll tell you the secret. Becca's father was Judge Gross. But in her own right, she has an extraordinary background, significant professional experience in advocacy, in public affairs, federal and state legislative processes, and strategic communications. I think she's one of those people who's never met a stranger. She is engaging and works across the aisle. I mean, she's not on one side of the aisle, but she can connect personally and from her advocacy perspective with pretty much anybody out there. And she is a Pinellas native, fourth-generation Floridian, graduated from the University of West Florida. She has operated her own consulting firm for quite a bit of time. So Becca will continue the amazing work that Deb Pruitt has been doing for the last 20 years. Let's see, Becca will come in October 25th, and Deb's retirement date is December 1st, but she's using some leave time, so the week or week to 2 weeks before that. So she'll actually be working her last day sometime before Thanksgiving. We had very much wanted to have this kind of overlap, because while a lot is documented, when you have somebody who's done a job for 20 years, there's a lot that can be passed on that's in the oh, by the way. So we look forward to introducing you to Becca at our November meeting. I'll stop there, but I'm available for questions.
Susan, you have?
Yeah, two comments on the discussion of the FSI navigators. You know, one of the things I'd like to say about this, it's excellent, it's superb, and we think about distributing this to our clients, and it may be not necessary to say in this room, but I think some of the employees, particularly I'm thinking of the school system and I'm thinking of employees of our funded agencies that may need these services. And I don't want to overlook getting this information out to those employees as well as to the clients we serve. And the second point is, yesterday I was on a meeting with United Way. I sit on their community development committee, and we had a very disheartening presentation on eviction in the entire Tampa Bay area, because I think you know they serve five counties. You know, we can always talk about impending crisis. Well, that crisis is here. And so much discussion about our Alice families that are no longer going to be getting affordable housing, because we all know rent prices are going up. You know, home ownership is becoming elusive to some of, and so the frustration is all the money that's available and hasn't been spent for rent assistance. One of the ideas the United Way came up with their board and their leadership is reach out to the VITA volunteers. I don't know if you're aware of the United Way VITA program, that they bring in almost thousands of volunteers to help low-income people complete IRS forms. And so a very creative idea is to reach out to those people and see if they would come in now and help these folks that need this rent assistance, but the forms are arduous. Even if they think they filled out the forms correctly, they're getting it kicked back. And so there's some opportunities for some collaboration there, because there will be some money needed to pay for the trainers for them. And again, I just, just getting that presentation yesterday, sat up and took notice that things are not necessarily getting better for those that need us the most.
And I would, at the risk of committing some of my staff to something without talking to them first, our navigators we worked hard to get a data sharing agreement with the county so that we could go look up and find out who needed it. But that takes time. I mean, it took us time to get there. And our navigators have been working in this area, and I say that broadly because there have been 3 different rental assistance programs for some time. So there may be some ways that if United Way folks want to learn a little bit about what we've already figured out, we would be happy to do that. I would be happy to commit my staff
That would be
to do
great.
that.
And I won't belabor this, but, I just think every time we talk about the time lags, what's happening while the time lags and the bureaucracy moves on, landlords are kicking people out because they can get 25 to 30% more rent. And you can't necessarily blame them, but when the people that are losing their homes are our Alice population, there's no place to go. And so it's this bureaucracy that, and it's no one's to blame. It's just a fact that there's millions of dollars out there that are going unused.
Comments, questions? Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Susan, for your comments. I'm
Just
sorry,
real briefly,
Karen?
I'll
I apologize.
forward it to Beth, but the emergency rental assistance program that the county's administering, I'll send you the email, so in case the board wants to see the update.
Great, thank you. In front of you also have the information items. Are there any comments concerning the information items? Okay, I don't see any. Any open agenda items? No one's on there. Mr. Butler, would you like to walk us through the anniversaries?
Sure. Thursday, November 4th, that's future meetings. Okay, Karen Streetman, 2 years with us. Jamie Peel, 2 years. Beth Houghton, 2 years. Wow, she's a newbie. Naki Holloway, 2 years. Sabrina Edgerton Malloy, 3 years. Desmond Newton, 5 years. Paul Webb, 5 years. And Becky Albert, 11 years. And Karen Bodges, 16 years. And that'll do it.
Do I have any other comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.